Okay. Here it is. Okay. Can you see the Gemara now?
No.
Not yet. Okay.
Now, yes.
Oh, you could see the Gemara?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Okay, here we go. So before we start, I want to first say that the learning should be a schutz for all the people who need a refuah, Reb Shimon Yehuda ben Rivka and Yaakov Shmuel ben Chana and Shimon ben Chasya and Yisrael Moshe ben Gittel and Eliyahu Shragafavish and Esther. Everyone should have a refuah shalom. That's number one. Number two is I want to share with the Olam an epic pshat, and I'm going to ask for help from the Mechaber of the epic pshat. In this week's parsha, there's a very, very difficult parsha to understand, and that is Nadav and Avihu died, and the Torah doesn't really say clearly what Nadav and Avihu did wrong. And
why? It says Bakriva made Zar.
Right. So what was the Avla? What's the problem with that Asar? What was the Avera involved? That's what they did. But what was the Avera? What statute did it violate? So there's actually 17 different pshatim on it. Rashi quotes two right away. One is that they made a psak, the Remoyer Halacha b'fnei Rabbah. That's one pshat that Rashi says. The other pshat, I forgot, but there's pshatim that say that they brought their own eish. In other words, instead of the halacha is that in order to be makar Torah, there was a special ma'aracha that was made on the mizbech, the choshes, and they would take from that and bring it into the mizbech hapnimi. They didn't do that. They brought their own fire. There's a pshat that was brought down that they thought that a Keteris would have its own internal combustion; it would combust on its own. So they didn't have the proper amuna that there would be a fire, and it was supposed to be an eish from Hashemayim, and they ended up making their own fire. There's a whole bunch of different pshatim. I don't have clarity in all the pshatim. And there was even some pshatim that learned that actually it was a shvach. They did good. They actually did good. They wanted to become so close to their Rebbeinu Shalom that they went too far, almost like we learned in Chagiga about the people who went into the Pardes and it was too much for them. Ad kedei kach that I think Rashi brings down a medrash where Moshe told Aaron that they were greater than us. They were greater than even us in our generation. So the question is, what precisely did they do wrong? So I saw in a sefer called Simply Pshat that's written by our very own of David Zolti, and please cut me off the moment I veer from the Simply Pshat. And it said a very beautiful thought. That is, we know that the Mishkan, the Mikdash, they were built to be a kapara for the Maisa Egel. What was the main avera of the Maisa Egel? Is that we were an Eibel Chochem. Since Moshe is not coming back, we're going to figure out what to do. Rather than wait and just follow B'tmimis exactly the words of the Rebbeinu Shalom, we were an Eibel Chochem and we decided we need to make our own Egel. And that's what got us into trouble. So the Rebbeinu Shalom said, make a Mishkan. And it says in Parashat Pekudei 17 times, which is the gematria of Toiv, Kasher Tziva Hashem es Moshe, and in Parashat Shmini, which is really the continuation of Parashat Pekudei, again it says, I think 7 times, Kasher Tziva Hashem es Moshe. So the emphasis on the whole idea of building the Mishkan and why that would be a kapara for the Egel is that we were going to follow to the T only what Rebbeinu Shalom says, and not veer a mashahu off of that. What Nadav and Avihu did was they in 17 different ways, depending on all the different shatim, they veered off from doing precisely what the Rebbeinu Shalom wanted. So that wasn't just a fact that they veered off. the problem is they undid the whole purpose of the Mishkan. If the whole purpose of the Mishkan is to be misaken for the Egel, and they didn't build a Mishkan that way, so that's it. It blows up the whole Tahelos of the Mishkan. That's a big disaster. That's a big disaster. So sure, what Oliver is trying to say is emes, but the point that brings them all together is they violated the Kasher Tziva Shemesh Moshe. So the simple Pshat asks, a person could mess up by mistake and do one thing. When there's so many things that they did to deviate from what the Kasher Tziva Shemesh Moshe, it almost smells from maybe they did this on purpose. Maybe they did it on purpose. So the simple Pshat opens this up to a new level, and it says Mamash Kavaltik. Maybe Ad Kach you can say that there was a tfi on Aaron. Aaron HaKohen was really the one who created the Egel. There was a tfi on him, and could be they wanted to sort of shift the blame off of Aaron. And even though Aaron deviated a mashuv when he was supposed to do, and Moshe Rabbeinu deviated a mashuv by Meriva, they wanted to make a big deviation so that they should take the oynish for the egel. They should take the oynish for any deviation, and protect the reputation and protect the schuyas, I guess, of Aaron Moshe. I'm not sure if I'm saying it over 100% accurately.
Okay, so Aaron, they thought somebody was supposed to die from this, and it was probably Aaron. So they did everything wrong possible, so they could take the death instead of Aaron. So they sacrificed themselves so Aaron could live.
So they wanted to iron it out. They wanted to iron out all the problems.
Yeah, okay. So that's the Pshat. I don't know if it's true or not, but that's what I came up with.
That was Gavaldik. I'm sure
they sacrificed themselves in the place of sacrifice. That's what the irony here.
So Nadav and Avihu are saying in Shemaim, finally someone understands us.
Yeah, right.
Hey, Gavaldik. Okay, so let's see where we were holding last week. So let's see where we're holding. Let's see where we're holding with our Zika problem. So we started off the parak on Daf Yud Zayin, and we started off discussing the erva of Eishes Achiv Shalahoya Ba'ilam. And the most basic elementary case of that would be where there was an only child by the name of Reuven, and he had a wife, and he died Rahman al-Islam without any children. And after Reuven died, a brother was born to him. Let's call him Shimon. Shimon may not do Yibum on Reuven's almana. And the reason why Shimon may not do Yibum on Reuven's almana is because Shimon was never on the face of this earth together with Reuven. But the Mishnah builds a little bit more of a complicated, developed case. And we actually discussed this already early on in the first parak of the Masechta, how Eishes Achov Shaloi Hayar Bailam is. So the Mishnah at the beginning of the parak, which we've learned, we're about to learn another Mishnah, but the Mishnah discusses the case of Eishes Achov Shaloi Bailam, which is there were two brothers, Reuven and Shimon. And Reuven was married to, let's say, we'll call her A, and Shimon was married, we'll call her B, not related to each other. And Reuven Rahman al-Islam dies without children. And because of that, Reuven's wife falls to Yibum to Shimon. Before Shimon had a chance to do Yibum, Levi was born. And the Mishnah says, Levi may not do Yibum at all on Reuven's almana, even after Shimon proceeds to do Yibum, and now Shimon is married to two women. His original wife, will call her B, and Reuven's almana, who will call A. If Shimon dies later without children, not only will Levi not be able to do Yibum on Shimon's wife A, who was Reuven's almana, but because of Tzaras Erva, Levi cannot even do Yibum on Shimon's wife B. That's what the Mishnah says. And the Gemara then went into a new discussion, which will be very relevant very soon to the question of whether or not there's Yesh Zika or Ein Zika. Zika is the relationship that exists between a woman whose husband died and left him without children. So we call her a Shemeres Yavim. And Yavim, the person who's going to be doing the Yibum. So before the Yibum actually occurs, as soon as the deceased passes away, a relationship is created. And that's called Zika. And everybody holds that there's a relationship of Zika. For instance, let's say Reuven's wife, A, Reuven dies, and A falls to Shimon for Yibum. Shimon may not marry A's mother. Shimon is not allowed to marry A's mother or Reuven's mother-in-law because there's a Zika, there's a relationship, a quasi-marriage relationship between Shimon and A because she fell to him to Yibum. But the question is, how strong is this relationship? Will this relationship even survive the death of A? So what happens if after Reuven dies and his wife A falls to Shimon for Yibum, Rahman L'Tlan, A dies as well. So the question is, if this A was considered Shimon's wife, because the Zika is like a real marriage, well then Shimon would be also to marry A's mother, because even after one's wife passes away, one is not allowed to marry his wife's mother. But if the Zika isn't really a full-blown marriage, then we will say that once A passes away, once Reuven's almana passes away, Shimon would be allowed to marry A's mother. So the Gemara started off with Rav Huna Amar Rav. So yeah. Rav is the Baal member, and Rav says that once A passes away, Shimon is allowed to marry A's mother. In other words, Ein Zika. And then we had Rabbi Yehuda. Now Rabbi Yehuda was a generation below Rav. So Rabbi Yehuda said Yesh Zika. So Rabbi Yehuda will call him a lightweight relative to Rav, who's a generation up, who's a heavyweight. And that's relevant because the Gemaras go on and know where Rabbi Yehuda got it from. If Rabbi Yehuda is making a statement of Yesh Zika, where did he get it from? Okay, so far we've been discussing Yesh Zika where there's only one sibling. There was Reuven and there was Shimon, which means when Reuven passes away, his wife, who we called A, is only potentially going to be married to Shimon because there are no other brothers. So that's called Yesh Zika when there's only one Yaveh. But the Gemara discusses another case where there's two brothers. And the case was where there was Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. So there's two brothers. And Reuven dies, and his wife A could now either marry Shimon or Levi. And what Shimon did, he did something wrong. He went and married the sister of A. He made Kedushin on the sister of A. He wasn't allowed to do that because that's the Achoy Zikukasai, but he did it anyway. He married the sister of A. So the question is, do we say that he can't do the Nesuin on his new wife because the sister is Zokak to him Leibum or not? So there's a Machloikis over there. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira holds that he may not do Nesuin on his new wife, he may not live with her, not be intimate with her, until Levi, the third brother, does Yibum on A. Once Levi does Yibum on A, it severs any type of relationship that Shimon has with A, because Levi did the Yibum, and therefore Shimon may now finish his marriage with his wife and do the Nesuin. That's what the Yehuda ben Beseira said, which means Yesh Zika. The Plukyan Yehuda ben Beseira says no, he could marry his wife right away, and we're not concerned about this relationship. Now there, the Zika is not as strong, because the Zika wasn't directly the Shimon. She was this A, who was Reuven's almana, was going to either do Yibum with Shimon or with Levi. It wasn't defined. So that's not as strong as Zika. Yet you still find that same achloikus exists. The Mandam holds Yesh Zika, holds there's even Zika when there's two Yevamim, and the Mandam holds Ein Zika even if we know for sure there's only one person who should fall into evil. We're going to learn today that it's possible to make a difference, that you'll hold Yesh Zika by one, but not by two. But so far what we've learned is Rav old Ein Zika holds, Sai if there's many Yevamim, Sai if there's only one Yavim, there's no Zika, and Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseir and Rabbi Yehuda holds Yesh Zika, there would be Zika, and even if there's two Yevamim, there's Yesh Zika. That's what we learned so far today, until today. The Gemara had kashas to bring rayas of Yesh Zika, Ein Zika, but the Gemara ended up answering all the questions. So now we're back to the basics. We have a machlekes of Yesh Zika or Ein Zika, and Ein Zika was expressed by Rav, who's a heavyweight, and Yesh Zika was expressed by Rabbi Yehuda, who compared to Rav was a lightweight. So now we're up to the second to the last line on Daf Yud Chesam and Peis. Amar le Abaye le Rabbi Yosef. Abaye told Rabbi Yosef, how do Rabbi Yehuda, this halacha that Rabbi Yehuda said that Yesh Zika is not his own, it's not from a lightweight, it's from a heavyweight. It's the Shmuel. He got it from Shmuel. It's none because we learned in the Mishnah, and let me turn over the page onto Yud Chesam and Aleph. I'm sorry, onto Yud Chesam and Beis, which is still Friday's daf. The Amar Shmuel, the Tanan, we learned in a brayse, Sheimeres Yodei, Shekidish Achiv Es Achoisa. This was that case we discussed. So there was Reuven, there was Shimon, and there was Levi. Reuven was married to A, Shimon was married to B, and Levi was married to C. And Reuven, Rachaman Litzlan, passes away without children. This is the second time tonight that we killed Reuven. And really, A was supposed to fall to Yibum to Shimon and Levi. What did Shimon do? He did something wrong. He married A's sister. He made Kedusha on A's sister. This is the case that we just discussed. Mishum Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseir Amr, we tell Shimon, you made Kedusha wrongfully on A's sister. Don't make Nesuin. Don't be intimate with her. Wait till your brother Levi does Yibum on A, which will totally sever your relationship with A, and will make you free and clear to finish your marriage, to consummate your marriage with your new wife. And the Amar Shmuel, and Shmuel said, Halacha Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseir. So you see clearly that it's Shmuel who is the source of the Psak Halacha, that Yesh Zika. So when Rabbi Yehuda said Yesh Zika, he probably got it from his Rebbe Shmuel. Frek the Gemara, the Irav Mai, and if it was, who cares? Why is this relevant? You tell me it's Shmuel, not Rav. And if he said it over from Rav, what would be the problem? So tomorrow, what do you mean? Kasha the Rav of the Rav. We just had Rav Huna quoting Rav as saying Ein Zika. So we would have a huge problem if Rabbi Yehuda was quoting Rav to say Yesh Zika. Frek the Gemara, why is that a problem? Dilma Ameroy Ninu Valibu the Rav. Maybe there's an argument between Rabbi Yehuda and Rav Huna, what Rav said. Rav Huna heard Rav say Ein Zika, and Rabbi Yehuda heard Rav say Yesh Zika. Zok Gemara, that's fine, but why would you go like this to scratch your ear? Why would you scratch your left ear with your right hand? Go glatt. My Rosh Hashiva once told me, he asked a Kashan Shir, and I proposed a teretz. So he told me, for what after sagen krumm, ich kann sagen glatt. Mir mailen mich, ich muss sagen das hier. Sag mal, habe ich glatt zu sagen, und sag mal nicht, aber ich sage krumm. Aber ich darf doch sagen kein Ziel. So die Kenntnis sagen glatt, sag auch nicht. So that's the question over here. So Zok to Gemara, Valiba the Rav, Zok to Gemara, Mishmei de Shmuel Behedja. Given the Itmar Mishmei de Shmuel Behedja, here we have a Mefurish expression, a Mefurish statement from Shmuel saying that he holds Yesh Zika. Mishmei de Rav, and if we're going to want to kvetch this opinion into Rav, then it's Kameroi. You're going to have to say that there's a machloik is what Rav said. Lo Shafkina on Mishmei de Shmuel Behedja. We're not going to abandon saying that Rabbi Yehuda is saying like Shmuel, where we know already that this is what Shmuel said, Yesika, umakminon kameroi valibidarav. And we're not going to kvetch it and say it like Rav and make a machlokes about Rav said. So that's why it's obvious to say that Rabbi Yehuda was saying the halach of Yesika according to Shmuel. Amar Rav Kahana, Zok Rav Kahana, Amrita l'shmaitza kamei Rav Zvid min Harda. I said this over to Rabbi Zvid min Harda that we weren't sure who Rabbi Yehuda said it from, and then we brought a raya that it must be because of Shmuel. And Amar, he responded, Atan hacham asnisala. When you quoted Rabbi Yehuda, you didn't automatically quote where he got it from. Anan behedya masninala. We actually heard, when we heard over the memo from Rabbi Yehuda made it very clear where he got it from. And this is what he said. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Rabbi Yehuda said this whole halacha in the name of Shmuel. So it was never a question of where Rabbi Yehuda got it from. And what did he say? Shemeres Yave Shemesa Asur Be'ima. He may not marry the mother. So Reuben Rachman died, and A fell to Yibam to Shimon, and then A Rachman died as well. Shimon may not marry A's mother because the relationship of Zika that existed before A died is like a marriage, and one is never allowed to marry the mother of one's wife. Al Makasaber Yes Zika. Va'ad Shmuel Atemei. And Shmuel is following his shita elsewhere. Damar Shmuel halacha Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. Halacha like Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. So we really have two halachas that were expressed. We have the halacha of Yesh Zika when there was only one brother, and Reuben's wife A died, and then we're saying that Shimon may not marry A's mother. And we also have Shmuel expressing this halacha when they were three brothers, and Reuben died, and Shimon married A's sister, and again we say Yesika. So why was it necessary to express this halach of Yesika in two different cases? Why wouldn't we know one from the other? And this is sort of a repeat of what we learned earlier with Shrichi. The Yashmin Yesika, if we would have only told us Yesika, which means that Shimon may not marry A's mother, I would have thought that only applies when there was only one brother. So it's a much stronger Zika, because A fell to Ibam to only one person, that was Shimon. Maybe there we say the Zika is strong enough that it's like a real marriage. Avil betrayed, but when Reuben died and his wife falls to Ibam to two brothers, Shimon and Levi, so there's no real strong connection to any specific brother, because it's yet unknown who's going to make this Yibum. So maybe that Zika is not strong enough to prevent him from marrying the sister. Kamash Malon, that Zika, even the Zika of an unknown, we don't know if it's going to go to Shimon or Levi, it's still strong enough of a Zika to prohibit Shimon from making the suin on his wife. The Yashmin Allah Rabbi ben Beseira, and if Shmuel only told us that we pass in Zika in the case of Yehuda ben Beseira, I would have thought the Zika only lasts as long as these women are alive. But if A dies, if Reuben's almana dies, maybe that cuts everything off, and then everything is as if there was never a marriage. Zika, and then he should be able to marry the mother-in-law. The only way Zika is eliminated is either through a chalitza. A yibum increases the Zika, but only through a chalitza. But the fact that A died, that doesn't eliminate that relationship. We look at it as if A was married to the Yavin, to Shimon, and therefore, even after she dies, Shimon may not marry A's mother. Beautiful. Next sugya could be somewhat complicated, so I want to just create a roadmap that will make it very simple. We learned in the first Mishnah of the Perek an example of a case of Eishes Acham Shlehay Bailam. And what was that case? That case was where there was Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. And they were each married to three women who were not related to each other. Reuben, I have to take it back. I made a mistake. It was only Reuben and Shimon. And they were each married to women that were not related to each other. Rachman al-Itzlan, Reuben dies without children. We just killed Reuben, I think, a fourth time tonight already. And he died, Rachman al-Itzlan, without children. So his wife falls to Yibum, A falls to Yibum to Shimon. And before Shimon had a chance to do Yibum, Levi was born, a third brother was born. So that's Eishes Achib Shalahaya Bailamai, because Levi was born after Reuben had already died. So Levi and Reuben never were on the face of this earth together. So Shimon did the Yibum. So now Shimon is married to A, who's Reuben's almana, and he's married to B, who's his own wife. And Rachman Latlon, Shimon now dies without any children. So these two women fall to Yibum, to Levi. Zok the Tanakama, our Mishnah said that Levi cannot marry A because A is usher to him because A was the wife of Reuven, who was Eshes Achov Shlehai Ba'ilama. So since A is usher to him, B is considered Sarah Sa'erva, and therefore Levi will not do Yibum, nor will he do Chalitza on either one of Shimon's wives. That was the very first Mishnah. So the first Mishnah, Levi was born even before Shimon did Yibum, meaning when Levi was born, Reuben's wife was still looking for a connection. So that it was able to create that Isser to Levi because Reuben's wife was not married to Shimon yet at that point. Our Mishnah now discusses a more mechudesh case. So let's start our Mishnah. Shnei Achim, there's two brothers, Reuben and Shimon once again. And Reuben is married to A and Shimon is married to B. Umeis echad man, and Rachman Lotzon, Reuben died. So that's the fifth time we killed him. V'yavim Hasheni es Eshes Achim. And Shimon did Yibum on there. So now Shimon is married to A and B. So any history with Reuben isn't gone. Now A and B are Shimon's wives. And then Levi was born. Umeis, and Shimon now dies. Once again, Levi cannot make Yibum on either one of these wives. So let's stop a second. We have now two cases. Which case is a bigger chiddush that Levi's asur? The first case, where Levi was born before Shimon did Yibum, where A was still a Shemeres Yavim of Reuven, there Levi cannot marry them? Or is it a bigger chiddush, the case we just learned, where by the time Levi was born, there was no more Zika from Reuven because A was married to Shimon. And now Levi came and he meets a whole new situation where Shimon has two wives and Reuben's totally out of the picture. Obviously, the Mishnah we just learned is the much greater chiddush, because even though when Levi was born, A is no longer a Shemeres Yavim from Reuven, she's already settled by Shimon, she's his pure wife, and Levi was alive together with Shimon. You would think that maybe Levi's allowed to marry these women. But the Tanakh tells you a chiddush, even in this case, you cannot marry the woman. Okay. Then the Mishnah has another case, which we're not going to focus on now, but the Mishnah says, also b'maimer. What if Shimon didn't do Yibum, but he did Maimer? What is Maimer? Maimer is something that's not sanctioned by the Torah. The Torah says that when there's a Shemeres Yavim, you either do Yibum or Chalitza. Maimer is going to make Kedushin. You give her money, and you say, Aret Mekudesh Li B'Tavasu. We discussed with David brought up, and we're not sure if you say Kedash Moshe of Yisrael, because Moshe and Yisrael probably don't want him to do this. But if someone does Maimer, what would be the halacha? Is it his wife or is it not his wife? Is it considered Shimon's wife or not? Umeis, and after Shimon did Maimer but didn't do Yibum, he died. So then we know Reuven's wife for sure is Asher to Levi. But the question is B, who is only Shimon's wife, will that be Asher to Levi? Well, it depends. If Maimer is considered a real marriage, well then Shimon's wife B is a Tzaras Erva. But if Maimer is not considered a marriage, it's not a good marriage, well then Shimon was only married to B, and he was never married to A. So then there's no reason why they shouldn't do Yibum on her. But since we're not sure if she is falling to Yibum to Levi or not, we say Chayletzes v'loy mishebemes. Let's not put too much concentration on this. It's the next point that we want to talk about. Reb Shimon. We learned already at the beginning of the Masechta that Reb Shimon argues on Eshes Achov Shloi Ba'Ilamai, and we learned that there was a machlokes what Reb Shimon holds. And today we're going to get down to the bottom of it. So Reb Shimon said, "Miyabim la'ezeh mehen sheyirtze." He's not going back on the case of Maimer. He's going back on one of the two previous cases. He says, when Reuben dies, and then Shimon did Yibam on 8, and by the time Levi was born, which is the case we just learned in our Mishnah, by the time Levi was born, Shimon was already married to both A and B, and then Shimon dies. Zok Reb Shimon, miyabim la'ezim en sheyirtza, or chaylos la'ezim en sheyirtza. This Levi is totally mutter with both of Shimon's wives, because when Levi came to be, these wives were both married to Shimon, and there's no issue whatsoever. Now, it's not crystal clear on what case Reb Shimon is expressing his opinion. Now, he's for sure expressing his opinion on the case that I just discussed, the case where Levi was not born until after Shimon was already married to A. But maybe Reb Shimon is also arguing on the first case of the Mishnah, where Levi was born before Shimon did Yibum. So you might ask, if Levi was born before Shimon did Yibum, how could Reb Shimon say that the Zika of Reuben is gone and it's just Shimon's wife? The answer is going to be what we just learned about. Reb Shimon will have to hold Yesh Zika. And the mere fact that Reuben's Almana fell to Yibum, to Shimon, even though Shimon didn't make Yibum yet, that Zika is so strong, it's like a marriage. And therefore we look at it that when Shimon was born, when Levi was born, Shimon was already married to A, because the Zika is perceived as a real marriage. So that is the question. Is Reb Shimon only arguing on the first case of our Mishnah, or Reb Shimon arguing on the first Mishnah as well? And that is the big machlokas that we had at the beginning of the Masechah in Pshat and Reb Shimon. Does Reb Shimon say that even if Levi was born before the Yibum, he could marry Shimon's wives? Or did Reb Shimon say only if Levi was born after the Yibum can he marry Shimon's wives? And that is the subject of our Gemara today. But I keep on repeating exactly what this question is, because that's really what we need to focus on. There's going to be a lot of kashas and rise back and forth that can be confusing, but I want to just focus on the goal, focus on the facts. And the whole question here is, when Reb Shimon said that he doesn't ask for Eshes Achav Slahai by Lamai, the question is that only when Levi was born after Shimon already did Yibum and was married fully to A and B? Or maybe that's even if Levi was born before Shimon did Yibum, because we consider the Zika as if Shimon was already fully married to A and B. That is the whole question of our Gemara today. So let's see what the Gemara says. Amar Rabbi Yishia said, Chaluk Hayer Rab Shimon Af B'Rishayna. Not only does Rab Shimon argue on the first case in our Mishnah, but he also argues on the first Mishnah, meaning even if Levi was born before the Yibum, Rab Shimon would hold that Levi is allowed to do Yibum on Shimon's two wives. Mimai, how do I know that? So it's more very simple. We already discussed that it's a much bigger chiddush, the halacha, according to the Rabbanim, that it's usher, it's a bigger chiddush, the second Mishnah, than the first Mishnah of our parak. So then the question is, if the second Mishnah of our parak is a bigger chiddush, so why did the Rabbanim even mention the halacha of the first Mishnah? Why did the Rabbanim have to say that if Levi was born before the Yibum, he's usher? The Rabbanim in our Mishnah holds even if Levi was born after the Yibum, he's usher. So why was it necessary b'chalal to have the first Mishnah? Zok to Gemara, mimai midakatani Mishnah yaser bava dereisha. Since the first case, according to the Rabbanon, is completely redundant, because our Mishnah is a greater chiddush than the first Mishnah. Laman katanila. For what reason does the Mishnah even mention the first case? Ilema l'Rabbanon. If it's to tell you some chiddush in the Rabbanon who answers, well, hashta yavim u'b'soif noilad. The second Mishnah, which is a case where Levi wasn't born until after Shimon did Yibum. When Levi was born, A was already properly married to Shimon, and she was mutter, because Levi and Shimon are coexisting. Nevertheless, Asri Rabbanon, the Rabbanon in our Mishnah, the Tanakama asers and says Levi is aser to marry these women. So Noilad v'achach Yove, the case of the first Mishnah, where Levi was born even before the Yibum, Mi boy, I need the Rabbanan to tell me that it's Asr, it's Pasha that it's Asr. So the reason why the Reisha, the first Mishnah of our parak, was mentioned cannot be to show me some type of Chiddush according to the Rabbanan. It must be because Rab Shimon is arguing not only on our Mishnah, but Rab Shimon is also arguing on the first Mishnah. And therefore, V'tana Reisha lo diachak Rab Shimon. The reason why I mentioned the first case is to say that Rab Shimon, even in a case where Levi was born before the Yibam, even there, Rab Shimon holds it will be mutter. V'tana Seifa, and our Mishnah here, it mentions lo diachak Rabbanon, that even if Levi was born after the marriage, according to the Rabbanon, it's still going to be Asr. So the question is, if Rab Shimon is arguing on the first case of our Mishnah, why didn't Rab Shimon interject in the first Mishnah? Why did he wait to the end to argue? He already argues in the Reisha. Dr. Gemara Ubedinu the Niflag Rab Shimon Bereisha. Really, Rab Shimon should have interjected and expressed his disagreement with the Tanakama in the first Mishnah in our parak, but he was a Torontonian. And Torontonians are polite, and they don't interrupt people while they're speaking. He let the Tanakama say all their Torah, even the Maimer, which has nothing to do with our issue. And after the Rabbanan finished, then he raised his hand, and he was very polite. And only then did he argue. So that's why Rab Shimon didn't interject until the end. Beautiful. So the problem is, if Rab Shimon holds that even if Levi was born before Shimon made Yibam, Levi's still allowed to do Yibam on both wives, so we know there is a problem of Eishes Achav Shlahai by Lamai. Where will it be relevant? How do you have ever such a case? Zok to Gemara, there's two ways that could happen, and we discussed them at the beginning of the shir tonight. One is Bechad Acha, Umis B'nad Loyach. Very simple. Reuben was an only child, and he was married to a woman, and he died Rachman Litzlan without children. There we go again. We killed him again. And then after he died, Shimon was born. So Shimon may not do Yibam on Reuben's wife. That's the case of no complicated cases with multiple brothers in its simplest form. Inami. Or I could even have a case where there's two brothers. So there was Reuven and Shimon. And Reuven, Rachman Litzlan, died without children. Reuven, Rachman Litzlan, died without children. And his wife, Eid Almana, fell to Shimon. And Shimon did not do Yibam, and he didn't do Chalitza. So she's still waiting around. And then Levi is born. So is Levi allowed to do Yibam on Reuven's Almana? Of course not. So maybe that's the case of Eishes Achav Shloilama, Inami betray, but V'loyav V'loymis. Shimon didn't do Yibam, and he didn't die. So she's still waiting for a resolution. So the resolution cannot be Levi, because Levi is Eishes Achav Shloilama. So frankly, now we're going to delve down into these two cases that we're talking about, Reb Shimon arguing about. So the Gemara says, I could appreciate if Shimon did already Yibam on Reuben's Almana on A, and only then Levi was born. Well, when Levi came onto the scene, Shimon was already fully married to A and B. So when Levi came onto the scene, there was no more Zika from Reuven. Right now, this woman A and B are just Shimon's wives. So there's no reason why Levi shouldn't be able to do Yibam on them. But the first case of our Mishnah, where Levi was born, while this woman was still floating around because Shimon had not yet done Yibam, my timer. Why would Reb Shimon allow Levi to do Yibam on her once Shimon does Yibam and Shimon dies? When Levi came on the scene, this woman A was still an almana of Reuven. Dr. Gemara, like we said earlier, Kasavar Yesika. Reb Shimon is going to have to hold, according to this tzad, that Yesika, and since when Reuven died, she fell to Shimon for Yibam, we look at it as if she's married to Shimon already. The Zika keknusa dami, and Zika is like a knusa. So the chiddush that we just learned now is that Reb Shimon considers Zika such a powerful bond, it's like a full marriage. So if Levi only came onto the scene after this Almana of Reuven was fully married to Shimon, so there's no reason why he should be awesome. Matzka for Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef says, I can't accept that Rabbi Shimon holds that Zika is so strong that it's considered like a marriage. Because Hashton Zika umaimer misafka leila Rabbi Shimon, ikaknusa dami ilaf knusa dami. We're going to bring a case where there was a Zika, and on top of the Zika, there was even mimer. And in that case, Rabbi Shimon is not sure if it's considered fully married. So how could you tell me that Zika alone, the fact that Reuben's almana was Zika to Shimon, we look at it like Shimon married her already, we're going to illustrate a case where there was Zika and there was mimer, and Rabbi Shimon is still not so sure that it's considered like a marriage. So what is this case? Mahi, that none we learned. Shloisha Achen Nusuin Shalosh Noshim Nachrios. Reuben, Shimon, and Levi are married to A, B, and C, and neither one is related to each other. Umeis Echad Mehen. Reuben died. This must be the 6th or 7th time where we killed Reuben. Umeis Echad Mehen, and Reuben died, and now A falls to Yibum to Shimon and to Levi. But Atuba Sheni Mimer, and Shimon didn't do Yibum, but Shimon made Mimer on this woman, on A. Umeit, and now Shimon dies. So now A, who's the almana of Reuven, who wasn't totally married yet, she only had mimer, and B, Shimon's wife, both fall to Yibum to Levi. So what is the halacha? What does the Tanakama say? Harelu choltois v'loy misyapis. Levi cannot do Yibum on either one of these women. And we're first going to focus on why he cannot do Yibum on Reuben's almana on A. The reason why he can't do Yibum on Reuben's almana is because if you think about it, Reuben's almana A is following to Levi now because she's the almana of Reuben, but Shimon made mimer on her, so she's also like quasi-married to Shimon. So she's Shimon's almana as well. So she's following to Levi from two different men. She's the almana of Reuben, and simultaneously, she's the almana of Shimon. So we learn, it says in the Pasuk by Yibum, Umeis echad mehem, when one brother dies, and this woman is the almana of only one man, then you say Yevama Yavayaleh. Mi shaleh zikes yavam echad. A woman is only the almana of one man, on such a woman is there a mitzvah of Yibum. V'loi shaleh zikes shnei yavam. But this woman, who's the almana of Reuven, but she's also a shtickle the almana of Shimon as well, because he made kedushin, she is fallen to Levi as an almana of two different men. She is not in the parasha of Yibum. And once you say that she's not in the parasha of Yibum, so her tzara, it might be her tzara, right? The B, who's Shimon's original wife, might be her tzara, so therefore she does chalitza and not Yibum. We don't need to focus on that. We're focusing on Reb Shimon. And remember, what are we looking for? Reb Shimon said Zika alone is keknusa, and here we're going to see that Zika with mimer, Reb Shimon is not even so sure if she's keknusa. So Reb Shimon Aimer, Levi, now that Shimon died and left over A and B, Levi is miyabim le'ezem huma en sheyirtza. He can go and make yibum on either A or B. And v'choylitz l'shniya, and then he'll make chalitza to the other woman. And what is the cheshbon? Yevumi tervayu lo. You can't make yibum both on A and B. Why? The dilma yesh zika. Maybe there is a zika, and if there is zika, then really A is no longer the almana of Reuben. She's exclusively the almana of Shimon, because the zika is like it's completely married. V'havi shnei yevamos habois mibayis echad. Now you have A, who's exclusively Shimon's wife, and you have B, who's exclusively Shimon's wife. We know when a man has two wives and he dies without children, you cannot make yibum on both of his wives. You only make yibum on one of his wives. So therefore, since it's mibayis echad, yivum echada, if they're in, I'm sorry, Mibai second period. He can't make Yibum on both of them because you cannot make Yibum on two women together of the same household. Yevum echada ve'iftir to suggest that it should make Yibum on one of these two women and not on the other one, lo, he can't do that either. Because the Dilma ain't Zika Kuknusa. Maybe A is not considered married to Shimon, and therefore she's still the Almana of Reuben. A is following to Levi from Reuven, and B is following to Levi from Shimon. And they both need a solution. They both need either Yibum or Chalitza. And therefore, Rab Shimon paskined that you do Yibum on one and Chalitza on the next. Now, what was the case over here? Shimon had a Zika to this woman, to Reuben's wife, to Reuben's Almana A, and Shimon also made Mimer on here. So here you have a case of Zika combined with Mimer, and Rab Shimon is still doubtful. He still has a suffix if A is considered to be fully married to Shimon. So how can you say that Zika alone without Mimer, Rab Shimon considers that fully married? Dr. Gemara, that midaraisa hachanami de miyab machada umivter echada, and if you want to hold that really Rab Shimon holds that Zika is like marriage, and since Zika is for sure like marriage, we look at both A and B as if they're the wives of Shimon, and therefore all Levi needs to do is either Yibum on Chalitza on one of these women. So why did Rab Shimon say in this case that the second woman needs to have Chalitza as well? It's a Gzeira d'Rabbanan. Umi d'Rabbanan hu d'Asr. You know why? Gzeira mishum shema yoimru beis Yevamos habois mishmebatim chadem yabma vidich mifter b'veloiklo. Let's think about it. What happened over here? Shimon died, and these two women fell now to Levi. But someone might mistakenly say that maybe A is not really the wife of Shimon. Maybe A is the wife of Reuben. And now what happened is you have two women who fell to Yibum, one from Reuben, one from Shimon, and one of them we're not doing anything to. So people are going to think, in a different case, if let's say there are three brothers married to three different women, and Reuben and Shimon die, and now that Reuben and Shimon die, each of their wives independently, A and B, are independent of each other, and they're both falling to Yibum, to Levi. And people might mistakenly think that when two women fall to Levi for Yibum, you only have to do Yibum on one of them, and the other one you don't have to do anything for. And since someone might make that mistake, Midurabanan, they said that in this case, when there was a mimer, we should make Chalitza on both of them. But really, Midairaisa, the Zika makes it like they're fully married to Shimon, and Levi really only needs to do Yibum or Chalitza on one of them.
Yosy.
Yes.
In other words, if three people were in a car accident,
Yes.
three brothers, two brothers were killed, and they had wives. And now the third brother has to give Chalitza to both of them.
Correct.
They both died without kids.
Correct.
Or if it happened a couple 100 years ago, could have been married.
Yibum on both of them.
Yibum on both of them.
That's right. But he has to deal with both of them. And that's why here also we make him deal with both of them, even though in this case, technically they're both married to Shimon. So for the Gemara, you have a very nice Torah. That's a Gzeira, but guess what? Reb Shimon doesn't say that. You can have the most wonderful Pshat with Gzeiras, but it's simply wrong, because Reb Shimon told us what he was thinking, and it wasn't this thing. For the time of Reb Shimon made it very clear as to why he says that you have to make Yibum on one and Chalit on the other. And he said, Mishum Maimer Velav Maimer. It's because the question is whether he considers Maimer a good marriage. The Tanya, the Brisa says, the Brisa elaborates on the conversation that Reb Shimon had with the Chachamim, and this is coming from Reb Shimon's mouth himself. And he said, "In my morai shall sheni mimer, if the mimer that Shimon did on Reuven's almana, if it's a good kedushin, well then when Levi does Yibum, Eisha Sheni hu boil. Levi is marrying, if Levi is being boiled, it's Shimon's wife. It's not Reuben's wife anymore. It's Shimon's wife who is being boiled because the mimer makes her married to Shimon. The mimer shall sheni any mimer, and if you hold the mimer doesn't count, well then Eishes Rishonu. She is still the wife of Reuben. Eishes Reuben the boil. And clearly the Zika doesn't make a difference. So how could you say that Reb Shimon holds that the Zika to Shimon and makes it like it's married to Shimon? Reb Shimon with his own mouth said that if the mimer doesn't count, she's Eishes Reuben. So we have a little bit of a problem here understanding Reb Shimon. How could you tell me that Reb Shimon says that the Zika makes it as if Reuben's almana is already married to Shimon? You see clearly from this thing that Reb Shimon said that that's not the case. Amar le Abaye, Zokt Abaye, there's a massive difference between this case where Reb Shimon is unsure if we consider already married to Shimon, and our case with Eishes Achav Shlahaya by Lamai, where Reb Shimon definitely considers married to Shimon. And he asked as follows: V'loishani loch ben zikas yavam echad l'zikas shnei yavamin? Don't you see a difference between if the zika is only to one man versus if the zika is to two people? Dilma ki amar Reb Shimon zika keknusa damya. Where did Reb Shimon say that zika is like it's fully married? That's biyavam echad. That's if she felt even to only one person. So let's have a look at the cases we're talking about. By the case of Eishes Acham Shloihaya Bailamai, what was the case? There was Reuben and Shimon. Reuben was married to A, and Shimon was married to B. Reuben Rahman dies without children, and his wife, his almana A, falls liyibum to Shimon. There's only Shimon. There's nobody else. So there, even though Shimon didn't do yibum yet, we look at it as if Shimon is fully married and did yibum already to A. You know why? Because there's nobody else. Then, if Levi's born, even before the Yevamos, it doesn't matter. Because the Zika to Shimon is so strong. Because Shimon is the only available Miyabim. In the case that we just discussed, there was Reuben, Shimon, and Levi. So when Reuben died, A didn't only fall Liyibum to Shimon, A fell Liyibum to Levi as well. That's not such a strong Zika. Because who said Shimon's going to marry her? Maybe Levi's going to marry her. In the case where there's two people involved, there Reb Shimon would agree that the Zika is not strong enough to consider her married. But in the case where there's only one option for Yibum, and that's Shimon, well then the Zika is so strong, it's Keknusa, and therefore Reb Shimon holds that if Levi was born after Reuben died, even though it's before Shimon did Yibum, we look at it as if Shimon already did the Yibum, because it's Zika Keknusa. So that is the Shita of Reb Oishia, that Reb Shimon holds that even if Levi was born before Shimon did Yibum, it's as if he was born after Shimon did Yibum, because the Zika from A to Shimon is so strong, it's like they're married already. And that is his Shita. So Frank the Gemara in Rishoni Leder Reb Shimon, does Reb Shimon actually hold such a radical Shita that even though Shimon did not make Yibum yet, Levi will not become usher to the A or B? But Tanya, we learned something again that Reb Shimon himself said that seems to contradict what we just said. Because the Brisa says in the name of Reb Shimon, Amar Reb Shimon, Klal Amar Reb Shimon, a rule. This is the rule when it comes to Eishes Acham Shlahai Bailam. Kol Shal Leida Kaidemes L'Nesuin. If Levi was born before the Yibum, we're using the word Nisuin to describe Yibum, because essentially that's what Yibum is. He has intimate relations with her, which is what Nisuin is. So Kol Shal Leida Kaidemes L'Nesuin. If Levi was born before the Yibum, then Loiche Letzis V'Loi B'Shebemes, which is a direct contradiction to what we are trying to say in Reb Shimon. Nisuin Kadim L'Leida. If the Yibum happened before Levi was born, then Oiche Letzis V'Loi B'Shebemes. My love, biyava mechad. This writer, this expression that Reb Shimon made, seems to be even. It's a very general rule. So even if there's only one yafet, even if there's only one Yovim, the Mishnah is clearly saying that Reb Shimon holds that you don't that if Levi was born before the Yibum, the Zika is not Knusa, and Levi will be also. Zok Gemara and Vikatani loy chelatzis v'loy mishabemes. Zok Gemara loy b'shnei Yevamim. This rule that Reb Shimon just said is by two Yevamim. By two Yevamim, like we said, the Zika is not strong enough, and therefore, if Levi was born before someone did Yibum, we don't consider it Kiknusa. If there was only one Yavim, then even though the Yibum didn't occur yet, Reb Shimon considers it like she's a Knus already because there's only one person who she can do Yibum. So Dr. Gemara, are you going to say that Reb Shimon agrees with you that if there's only one Yavim and Levi was born even before the Yibum occurred, you could still make Yibum and Chalitza? If that was the case, Adetani Nisuin Kaidim Leleida. When Reb Shimon said in his klal that if it's Nisuin Kaidim Leleida, then it's Chalatzas HaMishabemes. But if it's Nisuin came after the Leida, then it's Loi Chalatzas V'loi Mishabemes, live like V'lisna B'dida. We could have had a better difference. When do you say that if Levi was born before the Yibum, that it's also to do Yibum or Chalitza? That's only if there were two Yibum. But if there's only one person to do Yibum, even if Levi was born before the Yibum, and Shimon didn't make that exception. Zok Gemara, you know why he didn't make that exception? Because Kula b'shnei Yevam and Kamari. Rabbi Shimon's whole discussion is only in a case where there's multiple Yevam. So therefore, he didn't get into one Yavam, two Yavams, because he's talking about two Yavam. Frank Gemara, how could you say that? The Elamai Klala. What does it say in the Brets? Kalal Amar Rabbi Shimon. This is the rule. When you say this is the rule, that means you're considering every single type of case, which means Reb Shimon must have been referring both to a case of one Yavim or two Yavam. And he's saying that even by one Yavam, if Levi was born before Shimon did Yibam, it would be Asr. So that doesn't fit in with what we're saying. We have another problem. Matzah Reb Oishia. We have another problem with this Shita that we're saying that Reb Shimon holds that if Levi was born before Shimon did Yibam, that Levi would still be able to do Yibam. If Shimon dies, Levi would still be able to do Yibam on Shimon's two wives. I'll show you that that's not the case. Because the case is as follows. Gimel Achin. There were three brothers, Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. Shnai mehem nesuin shtei achayot. Reuven and Shimon were married to two sisters. Or Isha Ubita. Or Reuven and Shimon, Reuven was married to a woman, and Shimon was married to that woman's daughter. Or Isha Baspita, or a woman and her granddaughter. Or Isha Baspana, or a woman and her granddaughter through her son. So basically, Shimon and Reuven were married to two women, but it's impossible to ever marry both those women. You could only marry one or the other. You could either marry a mother or a daughter. You can't marry both. You can either marry a sister or a sister, but you can't marry both. So Reuven and Shimon were married to two women that no one could be married to both of them together. And then what happened? And then Reuven and Shimon died. So we're already at the 10th time we killed these people. Reuven and Shimon died. And now both these women fall to Levi. Now Levi can't do Yibam on both of them because Levi's not allowed to marry a mother and a daughter. Levi's not allowed to marry two sisters. So what does Levi do? So the Tanakama says, he has to do chalitza on both these women. He can't marry them because if he marries them both, it'll be awesome. So he makes chalitza on both. That we don't need to focus on the Rabban, we're focusing on Reb Shimon. For Reb Shimon Poiter, Reb Shimon holds up to Rashi, he doesn't even need chalitza. These women are not following him for Yibam. So the question is, why is that? We say Reuven and Shimon died. Now, they didn't die simultaneously. One must have died before the other. So let's think about it. If Reb Shimon held Zika's Keknusa, so let's say Reuven died first, and he was married to the mother. That means the mother became Zakuk to Levi to do Yibum. Therefore, and when she became Zokuk to Yibum, there was no problem. Shimon was still alive. So Liyavim Lekamaisa, let Levi do Yibum on Reuven's wife, who was the mother, the Sifter Idach. And when Shimon dies and the daughter falls to Levi for Yibum, she should be partnering Ganson. So if you hold that the Shimon holds Yesika, and it's like it's marriage, well then when Reuven died, his wife is exactly considered married to Levi. So if the wife is considered married to Levi, when Shimon dies later, it's an erva. So Shimon shouldn't be able to Yibum. So why did we say Reb Shimon Poiter that they both don't need Yibum or Chalitza? As a matter of fact, the first one to die, his wife needs Yibum or Chalitza. The second one doesn't. If you hold Yesika. Omer Rav Amram, you're 100% right. My Poiter Nami, Poiter B'Shnia. When it says Reb Shimon Poiter, it doesn't mean that both women are potter from Yibum and Chalitza. It means the second one to die, his almana is potter from Yibum and Chalitza. Why? Because we look at it as if Levi already married the almana of Reuben. Correct, Gemara, that's a very nice pshat, but that's not what Reb Shimon said. But Tanya, Reb Shimon potter b'shtein. It says beferish in the Brayta, Reb Shimon says they're both potter, meaning you don't make Yibum on Reuben's wife and you don't make Yibum on Shimon's wife. But why in the world would Levi not make Yibum on Reuben's wife? When she became almana, she was 100% mutter. Amar Rava, you know what it means, Reb Shimon poiter b'shtein? It means shniya shebezugzeh v'shniya shebezugzeh. Now, our Brisa listed off a possibility of 4 cases, right? We said either Reuben and Shimon were married to sisters, or Reuben and Shimon were married to a mother and a daughter, or a mother and a granddaughter, or a mother and a granddaughter through the son. But we understood it that each case was individual. The Gemara wants to suggest that Rava assumes that each of these 2 brothers, Reuben and Shimon, were married to 4 women. The first set of women that Reuben and Shimon were married to were sisters. The second set of women that Reuben and Shimon were married to was a mother and daughter. The third set of women was a mother and granddaughter. And the fourth set of women was mother and granddaughter. So we're talking about Reuben having married 4 women, and all those 4 women are arayas to the 4 women that Shimon married. So on that, Rava wanted to say, Shniya shebesugzeh, v'shniya shebesugzeh. When it says Reb Shimon poiter b'shtein, it means the other half of every single one of these pairs. And that's why it says Reb Shimon poiter b'shtein. Zok Gemara, this doesn't make sense what Rava is saying. Katoi Rava bar bazugi. Rava is mistaken with his pshat for 2 reasons. Chada da oi oi katani. What does it say in the Brisa? Oi oi oi. Either 2 sisters or a mother and a daughter. It doesn't say all. So Rava learned wrong pshat by suggesting that this guy was married to them all. It's either one or the other or the other or the other. I'm going to add to that if he was married to, if each of these brothers were married to 4 women, it's oi 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 vey is it oi, right? So Zok to Gemara, it says oi oi. So you can't say he was married to 4 sets of women. V'oid, if it's talking true that they were each married to 4 women, so why does it say Reb Shimon poiter b'shtein? It should say Reb Shimon poiter bar bason b'moilei. All 4 women that were married to Shimon, all 4 of them don't need Yibum, because Levi was already Zokuk to do Yibum to one of Reuven's wives. And we got another problem. Tanya Reb Shimon poiter b'shtein mina chalitza mina Yibum shenemar, it says in the pasuk, the isha el achoytza lesikach litzur b'shah shenasu tzarazu lazu lo yehelach l'kuchen afilu b'achmen. When 2 women fall to you to Yibum and you cannot marry both of them, you're not allowed to marry either of them. But the problem is, if you learn, like we want to say, that according to Reb Shimon, Yeh Zika, and as soon as the first one fell to Yibum, it's as if he's married to her, well, he's not falling to both of them. So the whole thing doesn't start. So we're stuck. If you want to hold Reb Shimon Yeh Zika, why over here does Reb Shimon say that you cannot make Yibum or Chalitza on either one of these women? Ela Amar Abashi, the answer is simple. If Reuben and Shimon did not die simultaneously, you're 100% right. Avada, Reuben's almana, that's who Shimon will make Yibum on. That's who Levi will make Yibum on. But when Shimon dies, Levi can't do anything because they're usher to him because he's already considered that he married one of Reuben's wives. So therefore, that wouldn't be the problem. When Reb Shimon says in our Brayta Parta B'Shnein, it's in a very specific case. When Reuben and Shimon died precisely at the same moment. So there was never a point where there was a Zika to Reuben's wife where there wasn't also a Zika to Shimon's wife. They happened simultaneously. Is it possible for two things to happen exactly simultaneously? For Reb Shimon Sover look Reb Yosy Glili Damar Efshel Tzamtzum. Reb Yosy Glili holds it's possible for two things to happen at precisely the same moment. And if Reuben and Shimon die at precisely the same moment, in that case, Reb Shimon would hold that you don't make Yibam or Chalitza on either one because of the pasuk of Vishal Achoshal Esika Chalitza. But Avad, if one died first, the Zika to the first set of Almanas patters the second set of Almanas. That's the end of the first Shita. So the first Shita was Reb Oishia, and he said that when Reb Shimon says there's no problem with Eishes Achim Shalahai Bailamai, that applies, say if Levi was born after Shimon did Yibam, but it also applies if Levi died before Shimon did Yibam. That's the first side. So all the details that we learned could be confusing. All we need to remember is that Reb Oishia holds, that Reb Shimon holds, that even if Levi was born before Shimon did Yibam, even then, when Shimon dies, Levi can make Yibam on both of Shimon's wives. And Reb Papa argues, and Reb Papa says, "B'Yibam v'akach noilut palak Reb Shimon." Reb Shimon is only arguing on the second Mishnah that we just learned, where Levi was not born until after Shimon already did Yibam. But b'noilud v'achach Yibam, if Levi was born before the Yibam, loy palak, there he wouldn't argue because Reb Papa holds that Reb Shimon holds ein zika, and therefore when Levi was born, Shimon did not yet do Yibam on Reuben's Almana, and therefore it asks it to Levi. The problem is the original problem that we started the Gemara with. If Shimon's not arguing on the Reisha, well, then why is the Reisha even mentioned? The Reisha is not a Chiddush, because if the Rabbanan says that it's Usher when Levi was born after Shimon already got married, which is in the second Mishnah, Kol Shekain, they would Aser if Levi was born before Shimon did Yibam. So why do we need the first Mishnah? So the Gemara v'tavayu l'Rabbanan itzrich. You need both cases, even according to the Rabbanan. You know why? Because v'loizu afsu katani. There's a figure of how Tanoim speak, and sometimes they say not only this small chiddush, but even the greater chiddush, and that's what the Rabbanan are saying. Not only if Levi was born before the Yibam is it Aser, but even if Levi was born after the Yibam, the Rabbanan hold it's still Aser. So those are the two shittas. Very, very simple. In the case where Levi was born before Shimon did Yibam, is it mutter or Aser? According to Reb Oishia, it's mutter, and according to Reb Papa, it's Aser. Simple, simple. And now the Gemara is going to bring a raya to Reb Papa. Tanya Kavasa to Reb Papa, Utsuyufta to Reb Oishia. We're now going to bring a raya to Reb Papa, and then up to Reb Oishia. So we're going to prove that if Levi was born before Shimon did Yibam, Reb Shimon's going to hold that that's Aser. And here's the story. Shnei Achim Boilam Echad. Reuben and Shimon lived together. Umeis Echad men b'leiv lad. Nerachman Litzlan, Reuben died without a child. And now his wife A falls Yibum to Shimon. V'amar Sheni hazel asus maimer. And Sheni means Shimon did maimer on Reuben's almana A. V'amar Sheni hazel asus maimer b'yivimta. But v'lo hisbak lasus b'maimer. He wanted to do maimer, but he didn't get a chance. Ad shenoilud layach. Until Levi was born. And then Umeis. So this is a weird case. Because really all it could have said is that Reuben died, and before Shimon did anything, Levi was born. But the Tana says Shimon wanted to do minor, but didn't get a chance to do minor. Why is that necessary? So let's put that question aside. It's something that the Gemara is going to deal with later. But as far as what we need to know in the case of the Tanakama is that Reuben died, Shimon and his wife A was Zakok to Yibam to Shimon. Shimon died. First Levi was born, then Shimon died. Umeis A, who was Reuben's almana, she's not mechuyev even by Levi because she's Eishes Achas Lahai by Lamai. Ushnia and Shimon's wife, Oy Chayletis Oy Mishabemis. Either does Chalitza or Yibum. Because we say that Shimon only had one wife, and therefore you do Chalitza or Yibum. Also, by Maimer, what if he actually made Maimer? What if Shimon made Maimer before he died? The Achach Nolarach, and then Levi was born, or maybe Levi was born also by Maimer, Umeis, and then Shimon died. So once again, the Tanakama says the same thing. Reuben's wife A is also to Levi, and therefore there's no Yibum, because there's an Israel of Eshes Acham Shalai by Lamai, Ushnia, and Shimon's wife, Chayletzes V'loi Mishabem, and she does Chalitza, not Yibum, because since Shimon did Maimer, we're not sure if she's the Tzaras Ha'ever or not, and therefore she only does Chalitza. Okay, we don't need to focus on this yet, because this is not what we're bringing a raya from. We're going to bring the raya from Amud Beis. So let's go to Yutes Amud Beis, and let's see the next line of the Gemara. Zog to the Gemara, Reb Shimon Omer, and this Reb Shimon is also not relevant to our discussion. We'll learn Pshat on it, but it's not relevant to our raya. Reb Shimon Omer, there's two women here. There's A, who is the almana of Reuven, and there's B, who's the almana of Shimon. Zok Reb Shimon, one of these two women only, if you do Yibam on her or Chalitza on her, the other one will be potter. But that's only one of these two women. The other woman won't work. So Rashi tells us that the Gemara later on is going to try to figure out what this case is. But Rashi gives us inside information and tells us what the maskana of the Gemara is, how to understand this case. We're still going to have to go through the Gemara's calculations. But for now, we're going to skip it, and we're going to see what the maskana is. So the maskana is of Rashi, that this case is where Reuven died, and Shimon made Maimer on Reuven's almana, and then Levi was born. So when Levi was born, Shimon had already done Maimer, and then Shimon died. So what does Reb Shimon paskin? Reb Shimon paskins that if you do Bia or Chalitza on which woman, if you do Bia or Chalitza on Shimon's wife on B, then you don't have to do anything for Reuben's wife A. Why? Let's think about it. Let's say the Maimer is nothing. If the Maimer is nothing, then A is Reuben's almana, who Levi for sure doesn't do Yibum on because she's an Eishes Acham Shlahai by Lama. B is Shimon's wife, and Shimon's only wife, and therefore Levi could do Yibum or Chalitza on her. And if you hold Maimer is Kaina, then Shimon is married to both A and B, and therefore there is no more Zika from Reuven, because now we say that A and B are both Shimon's wives. So therefore, if he does Yibum or Chalitza on B, it patters A because she's another wife of Shimon. However, Cholas Labalas Maimer, but if he did Chalitza on Reuven's wife, on A, Leinifter Tzara, it wouldn't patter the Tzara. Because if you hold that the Maimer is not Koina, then he made Chalitza on a woman who anyway he didn't have a Chiv or Yibam on, because it was Reuven's Almana, and Shimon's Almana, who's still Mechuv in Yibam, he ignored. So therefore, Reb Shimon says the right thing to do is to make Yibam and Chalitza on B, who's Shimon's wife, and then no matter whether Maimer is Koina or not, nothing else is necessary. Okay, now we're getting to the case that's relevant. So we're going to list off now 3 cases according to the Chachamim. Case number 1, Kansa Umeis. Shimon made Yibam on A, on Reuven's Alman. The Ariach Noyed Loyach, and then Levi was born. Oy Shenoyed Loyach, or even if Levi was born first, the Achach Kansa, and only then did Shimon do Yibam, Umeis, and then Shimon dies. Shtein Paturais Min HaChalitza Min HaYibam. Because that's the Shita of the Chachamim. What about Kansa v'Noyed Loyach? What if first Shimon did Yibam, and after Shimon did Yibam, then Levi was born? The Achach Chametz, and then Shimon died. Shtein Peturas min Chalitza min Yibum. Did Reb Meir. So let's stop and analyze what we just learned. There's three cases here, and all three cases have the same halacha. Peturas min Chalitza umin Yibum. So if they all have the same halacha, why in the world did the Tana break out the third case? Like, let's look. First, there's two cases bundled together. Kansa umeis, the achach noyed loyach, case number one. Oisha noyed loyach, the achach kansa umeis. So those are two cases. And then the Tana breaks a third case. Kansa noyed loyach, the achach meis, why didn't it say all three together with one psak at the end? Why did it separate out this case if it has the same psak as the previous two cases? So that's something we have to think about. But let's go back. Reb Shimon said, since in this very last case, by the time Levi was born, Shimon had already done Yibum on A, so now A and B are no longer anything to do with Reuben. They're both Shimon's wife. Therefore, and when Levi was born, there was never any Isser b'koyach Reuven, because when Levi was born, Shimon had already done evil on them. Therefore, if Shimon dies, Levi is miyabim la'ezim and sheyirtza. Levi could do even on either one, or chaylos le'lem sheyirtza. So, first, the question we asked earlier: Ha'bava the seifa l'man katana. Why did the Tana break out the last case of Kansa v'noy la'ach and put it under its separate heading, according to the Chachamim? Ilemel Reb Meir katanila. If it broke it out because Reb Meir had something specific and special that he wanted to direct to this case, that's not true. Michti loy shani leile Reb Meir ben yivam v'achach noiled ben noiled v'achach yivam. Reb Meir paskined exactly the same psak as all the other cases. Peturas min hachalitzu min yivam. So our vinu v'lisninu. So why didn't Reb Meir put all the cases together? The teretz is the Tana separated this last case out because that's the only case upon which Reb Shimon argues. And the law of Reb Shimon, it must be that we separated out that one case in Reb Meir because that's the only case that Reb Meir says is usher, where Reb Shimon argues and says it's mutter. And the law of Reb Shimon, it's because of Reb Shimon that we separated out this case, and it teaches us uviyibein v'achrach noiled polik. Reb Shimon is only arguing on the last case where Levi was not born until after Shimon did Yibum. But in one of the earlier cases where Levi was born before the Yibum, loy polik, he doesn't argue shma mina. So that's the maskana of the Gemara. We had a machlekes Reb Yosy and Reb Papa. Does Reb Shimon matter even if Levi was born before Shimon did Yibum? And we have a raya from here that Reb Shimon does not argue there. Reb Shimon agrees that if Levi was born before Shimon did Yibum, that Levi would be usher to both these women. The only time Reb Shimon argues on the Tanakama is if after Shimon did Yibum, and now there's no connection to Reuven anymore. A and B are both Shimon's wives, and only then is Levi born. Only then could Levi do Yibum on either one of them if Rechman L'Tzlan Shimon dies. Okay, and that takes us to the end of the sugya. We had a machlokes Pshat and Reb Shimon, and we resolved that Reb Shimon holds that only Yibem Ul'achach Noiled, only there is there no problem of Eishes Achshel Hay Bailo. Now the Gemara is going to go back to analyze that case that we discussed earlier, where he was gonna do Maimer, he didn't do Maimer. So let's see what it is. Amar Mar. Amar Hashem Lasses Maimer b'Yevimtoi, V'lo Hizbek Lasses Maimer b'Yevimtoi, Ad Shenoid Loyach Umeis. He was going to do Maimer, he didn't do Maimer, and then Levi was born, and then Shimon died. What's going on over here? So there's a famous story with a bacher who was read a shidduch, and the girl's family asked information about this bacher, and they told him, "Oh, this bacher, help, I'm learning." So they were ecstatic. So they did the shidduch, and after they did the shidduch, they see the guy does not open a sefer, he doesn't learn a Jewish word. So they asked the guy who they asked the information from, "You told me that this bacher helped by learning." So the guy said, "Help, I'm learning." He's right up to learning. He just didn't start yet. But bottom learning helped him. So that's the same thing over here. What's going on over here? My Amad and my Lo Hispik. What is the Brisa talking about? He was going to do Maimer, and he didn't do Maimer. He Avad Avad, V'lo Avad Lo Avad. He either did Maimer or didn't do Maimer. What is irrelevant that he wanted to do, he didn't get a chance to? Dr. Gemara, the Brisa is telling us a very important piece of information. Elo Amad Midaita, V'lo Hispik Midaita. On the first date, she got back to the Shatrin and said, I love this guy, I want to marry him. And then on the second date, he was all excited, so he proposed. And she said, no, I don't want. So by the second date, after the first date, she liked him. So by the second date, he proposed, and he said, and she said, I don't want to marry you. And he said, well, I don't care. I want you Balkarcha. So what does our Brisa say? Loikana. If you did Maimer against her will, you cannot force her. And therefore, you're not going to. Udaloik Rebbe. This is a very big chiddush, because Rebbe holds that if you did Maimer against her will, just like Yevamos against her will, she becomes married to him. The Tanya, what if someone forces a woman against her will and does Maimer? Rebbe Omer Kana. Rebbe holds it works. The Chachamim Loikan and the Chacham hold it does not work Balkarchai. That's what our Brisa holds. What's the reasoning for the machlokes? My time of the Rebbe. Why would Rebbe hold it works? Balkarcha. Gamar mi bia di Yevamos. Maimer will be like bia of Yevamos. Ma bia di Yevamos balkarcha. Just like bia is kind of balkarcha by Yibam. Af kedushin di Yevamos balkarcha. So too kedushin will be kind of even balkarcha. For Rabbanan gami mi kedushin da alma. The Rabbanan compared the kedushin of Maimer to any kedushin. Ma kedushin the alma midaita. Just like when you normally do kedushin, she has to be willing. Af kedushin di Yevamos midaita. So too, when you do kedushin on Yevamos, she also has to be willing. The makamifically. So what is the svar? Why one picks one and one picks the other? Mar savar mil di Yevamos and mil di Yevamos havelele melech. Rebbe holds when you're learning halachas related to Yibam, you learn from Yibam. So Maimer, which is relevant to Yibam, we learn it out of Yibam, which works balkarcha. Umar savar the chamol mil de kedushin and mil de kedushin havelele melech. Maimer might be in the case of Yibam, but Maimer is actually kedushin. So we should follow the rules of normal kedushin. Period. So now we're up to the last thing that we need to learn today. Now, right at the beginning of the Gemara of the Omid that just now we learned, we said and we were fortunate that Rashi shared with us the Maskana of the Gemara that speaking in a case where first Shimon did Maimer and then Levi was born. And therefore, if Levi does Yibam or Chalitza on Shimon's wife, it takes care of everything. Now we're up to the Gemara where the Gemara figures out this point. So the Gemara is now going to analyze this line and it's going to come to the conclusion that we just discussed. So Zok to Gemara, also b'Maimer. So we have Reuben and Shimon. And Rechman son Reuben dies. And Reuben's wife, Reuben's almana, falls to Yibam, to Shimon. And Shimon made Maimer on A. And after Shimon did Maimer, the Achiach Ner Loyach, and then Levi was born. Or there was a Levi was born, the Ach also by Maimer, and then he did Maimer. Umeis, and then Shimon died. So Rishoni Yotze Mishum Eishes Achim Shalhai Bailam. Reuben's almana goes free. This is according to the Chachamim, because it's Eishes Achim Shalhai Bailam. Ushnia and Shimon's wife, who was B, Chayletzes V'lei Mishabem. Now we need to focus. Reb Shimon Aimer, Reb Shimon holds differently. He holds be also or Chalitzah Shal Achas Mehen. If you do Bia, which is Yibam, or Chalitza, on one of these two women, which we know means B, Shimon's wife, Pateres Terasa will take care of A, and A will not need anything at all. So Reb Shimon Ahayakoi. Reb Shimon's comments are on precisely which case. Ilema Anold Loyach, the Ach Asaba Minor. If Reb Shimon is referring to a case where first Levi was born and only afterwards Shimon did Maimer, we already proved that Reb Shimon holds its usher in that case. Ha'amrat, we already said that we already clarified, we brought a writer of Papa against Rabbi Shia, that if Levi was born before the Yibam was done or before the Maimer was done, Reb Shimon doesn't argue. Reb Shimon holds that Levi will never be able to marry A, and therefore B is going to be usher as well. Ella, it must be referring to the case. So basically, Reuben died, and A fell to Yibum to Shimon, and then Shimon did mimer on A, and then Levi was born. So the law is chalatz l'balas mimer. If Levi is going to do chalitza on A on Reuben's almana, lo nifter etzara. That's not going to pater Shimon's wife B from Yibum. My time, why not? We should have it tzara vada. The tzara is for sure Shimon's wife. Ubalas mimer and A, who was the one who was the almana of Reuben, suffered. We're not sure if that's Shimon's wife because we don't know if mimer is koiner or not. Therefore, bein tzofik moitzim midevada. If he's going to do yibum or chalitza on one of the wives of Shimon, he has to do yibum and chalitza on the woman who we know for sure is Shimon's wife. The only woman that we know for sure is Shimon's wife is B, who is always Shimon's wife. We don't know about A. But once he does yibum or chalitza on B, on Shimon's wife, then Memonashech. If mimer is koina, so then A was also Shimon's wife, and Levi did yibum on B, on the other wife. When you do yibum on one wife or chalitza on one wife, the other women go free. And if the old mimer is not koina, well then Shimon only had one wife, and that's the wife that Levi will do yibum or chalitza. And A, who's still the almon of Reuven, Levi doesn't do yibum on her because for that Levi is eshes achab shalahaya by lamai. And that takes us to the end of the sugya. So we learned a lot of complicated things, but all we really need to remember is when Reb Shimon argues in our Mishnah, the Mishnah that we just learned, he's only arguing in our case of the Mishnah, and that is if Levi was born if Levi was born after Shimon did Yibum, and then Shimon dies, only then is Levi allowed to do Yibum or Chalitza on either one of Shimon's wives. But if Levi was born before, like in the first case of the first Mishnah of our parak, everybody agrees that Levi will never be able to do Yibum on A or B. Period. Yosy bar Menashe bar Zvid kamei Rav Huna. The Yosy v'kamar, my time in Reb Shimon. What is the reason why Reb Shimon says that if Levi was born after Shimon did Yibum already, why is it that Reb Shimon allows Levi to marry these two wives? Practically, my time in Reb Shimon, you're probing the sword of Reb Shimon. We discussed it already tonight many times. We said the reason is because when Levi came onto the scene, and he found that A is now completely severed from Reuben and is now Shimon's wife fully, and that's Eshes Achad by Lama. There was never a time when Levi was in the world that this woman A was an alman of Reuben. She was already Shimon's wife. So that's very logical. So why would you ask me what's Reb Shimon's svara? We know it. If anything, why would your Rabbanan hold that it's also? Zakta Gemara Amar Kra, the pasuk says, "Ulakacha loyla isha v'yibma." Even after you took this woman and you made yibum, she's still a yibma. She's still a yevama. Adayin yivumin harishayim aleh. So the pasuk is saying a massive chiddush that even after you did yibum, there's still some connection that makes her Reuben's almana. She's still considered a yevama, and that connection will say that Levi will forever be usher to this woman. Frank the Gemara, you're telling me that after Yibum, she's not like a regular wife? She's still considered like connected to Reuben? Elahaditnan, we learned already at the beginning of the Masechta, Kansa Harei Kishul Chadavar. Once someone does Yibum on a woman, it's like his wife. So if he wants to get rid of her, he gives her a get. He doesn't give her a chalitza. Malamed teaches you, if you want to get rid of a woman who you made yibum on, you just give her a get and nothing else. Shemagarsha, beget umachsira. You could be megarsha with a get, and you could even marry her again, and you don't say the problem of Eshazach, because all that is gone. All her previous relationships with Reuben is gone, and this is a new marriage with Shimon. So if that's the case, Hatam Nami, Lema, the Yibma, Adayin Yivuman Harishayim Aleh, The same way you're saying that Reuven's relationship with this woman lingers even after Shimon did Yibum. Well, if it lingers, then Shimon should have to give her a chalitza to get rid of her. We have a pasuk that says that once you do Yibum, it's 100% your wife. You can't have it both ways. You either say Yibma that there's still a lingering relationship from Reuven, or you say that it's a whole new parsha. You can't have it both ways. So the teretz is we have two psukim. One that says there's still a relationship with Reuben, and one that says it's a new marriage to Shimon. So we're applying one to one and one to the other. When we're applying that there's still a relationship, that's the Asr Eishes Achim Shal Hayir, even if Levi didn't come onto the scene until Shimon married her. But Lagabe, that she's a regular wife, that you could give her a get, Lagabe that you say Lekach Leisha. Umar Royce. Why do you do it that way? So tomorrow, Mistavro Shadi Atera Ahatera. If someone did a normal, regular Yibum, that's where we'll say Lekach Leisha, that it's fully your wife, and there is no prior relationship from Reuven, and therefore, if you divorce her, she goes free. You don't have to give her a chalitza. The Shadi Yisura Yisura, and the V'yibma, which tells us that there's still a lingering relationship from Reuven, that applies when we're talking about Eishes Achim Shalahai Bailamai, where the Yibam isn't so clean because there's still Yisurim involved. That's where we'll apply the V'yibma. And let's stop here, and the Minsham will be Mamshach tomorrow. Baruch Hashem, we were able to catch up fully. And now we're right with the daf. And we even got a bonus epic Dvar Torah out of it. Okay, I get to welcome everybody.
Yeah.